Cloud thick enough maybe for a bit of drizzle over northern England, maybe the Midlands. And during the day, an increasing threat of a few light showers just trickling towards Northern Ireland. Mostly a dry start across Scotland, so we'll have some clear skies in the northeast. It will allow for a chilly start here, but quite quickly, once the sun's up, those temperatures will start to tick up through the day. As we go through the day, not a great deal of change. I'm hopeful the cloud will break up a little bit more and we'll see some sunny spells. So dry and bright basically sums it up, but there will be a few showers coming into Northern Ireland during the afternoon. Later, they could drift into western Scotland. Temperature-wise, well, about average for the time of year for most, but still feeling quite cool, especially if it stays cloudy in northeast England. Only 16 or 17 here. Bit of sunshine, we could see temperatures into the low 20s elsewhere. Sunday sees the threat of a few showers into western Scotland, but again, pretty well scattered. Most places will stay dry, and many places will see a bit more in the way of sunshine coming through. And as a result, temperatures just lifting by a little bit. And into Monday, even more optimistic for sunny skies for many and slightly warmer.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News, where I speak up for you, the forgotten majority. Coming up on tonight's show, is Britain broken? The man responsible for fixing it says everything is fine, but is the Prime Minister simply burying his head in the sand? And Lucy Connolly is finally free, claiming that she was Keir Starmer's political prisoner. But with criminal convictions for social media posts hitting a record high, how many other Brits could face the same fate as Lucy Connolly? And a new record number of illegal migrants have crossed into the country illegally on the small boats under a Labour government that promised to smash the gangs. Well, with dozens of migrant hotel protests planned across the country this weekend, tonight we'll be debating how to fix Britain's broken borders. And in the last section of the show, in Matt in Conversation, I'm going to be speaking to journalist and economist Liam Halligan to discuss why he thinks the UK economy is now hanging by a thread. As Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now, I'll be joined tonight by my top panel. As ever, although we want to hear your views tonight too, at gbnews.com/you're saying you can reach us on X at GB News. But now it's time for the news.
Very good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story this evening, Lucy Connolly has accused Sir Keir Starmer of holding her as a political prisoner and says it was bizarre that she had to spend more than a year behind bars. Speaking to The Telegraph, she said she is considering legal action against the police as she believes that they were dishonest in what they released about her. A Northamptonshire police spokesperson said that they are hoping to contact Miss Connolly in the coming days to understand why she's raised the issues. Miss Connolly was handed a 31-month sentence but left HMP Peterborough yesterday morning after being released on licence.
Of course, it wasn't my finest moment, and I definitely don't advocate violence or burning anything down or anything of the sort. To be honest, it was emotion. Does that make sense to you? I don't know what was going on. I was just so upset and so angry and just thinking to myself, when will this stop, you know? I was just anger, you know, I wasn't thinking rationally.
Somani Hotels, the owner of the Bell Hotel in Epping and the Home Office, will seek to appeal against the High Court's refusal to allow it to intervene in the case of a hotel used to house asylum seekers in Epping. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has condemned the Home Office's decision, calling it completely wrong. New figures reveal more than 32,000 asylum seekers are currently living in hotels, an 8% increase since Labour's first year in power. Conservative Party Chair Kevin Hollingrake firmly disagrees with the government's decision.
The government's just not listening. People do not want these hotels in their local area, and what they actually want is a deterrent putting back in place, like we had with the Rwanda deterrent, which has stopped these crossings in the first place. That's what the government needs to re-implement.
Benjamin Netanyahu says the IPC have ignored recent humanitarian steps made by Israel in Gaza amid their declaration of a famine in Gaza City. The UN-backed food security body warns that more than 500,000 people face starvation, destitution and death under catastrophic conditions. The Israeli Prime Minister says their report is an outright lie and insists that Israel has a policy of preventing starvation. This all comes as Mr Netanyahu confirms that Israel will resume negotiations with the terror group Hamas for the release of all the hostages captured during the October 7th attacks. But its military will continue its Gaza City offensive despite international outcry. And scientists have discovered a new species of dinosaur which had an eye-catching sail along its back and tail, which might have been used to attract mates. The new dinosaur, whose fossils were found on the Isle of Wight, was identified by PhD student at the University of Portsmouth and the Natural History Museum, Jeremy Lockwood. The dinosaur has been named after sailor Dame Ellen MacArthur, who also comes from the Isle of Wight. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour, but now it's back to Matt.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, where I am joined by my panel, acting deputy editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw. Now, key question tonight, is Britain broken? Because here's something utterly mind-boggling. According to our Labour Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, the answer is no. Everything is absolutely fine, according to his spokespersons today. Well, I honestly don't know what planet Keir Starmer is living on, because just look around the country that we are living in today. Economically, we are facing soaring inflation. The current rate of 3.8% is nearly double the Bank of England's target. Food prices almost certainly going to go up by an estimated 6% in the rest of this year. Unemployment, meanwhile, stands at a 4-year high. Businesses are closing at the fastest rate in this country since the days of COVID. Productivity is falling through the floor. GDP per capita, a key measure of living standards, has now sunk so low that it is lower than in Italy. Our living standards are lower than our Italian counterparts. The British housing stock is also reaching breaking point. In the middle of one of the worst housing crises on record, we're still allowing net migration of upwards of 400,000 people every year. Now, despite promising to build 1.5 million new homes, this Labour government managed to build just 90,000 between July and December last year, an even slower rate of house building than the Tories managed before them. It seems that the only way to guarantee yourself a home in modern Britain is to arrive on a small boat, which leads me on to the undeniable disaster that our borders have become. Now, later in tonight's show, we're going to be looking at that Home Office data in a lot of detail and showing you just how much chaos and carnage is unfolding on the borders. Illegal migration, of course, now hitting record highs under Labour. 28,000 illegal migrants have crossed the English Channel this year alone. That is up 50% on the same point last year. There is no evidence this Labour government is smashing the gangs. Quite the opposite. The number of asylum seekers being housed in hotels, meanwhile, is up 8% too, suggesting that this crisis is just getting worse. And it's not just me who's thinking this way. The British people also seem to agree. 2/3 of the entire country say Britain is already broken. Now, by pretending that the country he's running into the ground is in fact plodding along quite nicely, Sir Keir Starmer, of course, is again showing how completely and utterly adrift both he and Rachel Reeves are from the concerns of ordinary Brits. We can all see what's happening to our country. We can all see what's happening to our local communities. We are not blind. All Number 10 have to offer as reassurance seems to be more gaslighting and attempts to divert the blame. What we now need to do, rather than just complain about this dire state of affairs, is try to do something to fix it. Now, on this show, we're constantly suggesting positive alternatives on how to fix Britain. Leave the European Convention on Human Rights so we can deport foreign criminals and control our borders. Lower the highest tax burden this country has faced in decades. The list goes on and on. There is a better way forward for Britain, and almost all of us see it. We can feel it. We just need to follow that path. The only person, of course, who can't see it, it seems, is the man in charge of the country. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/your say. Of course, you can reach us at GB News. But joining us now is former Labour Cabinet Minister Shaun Woodward. Shaun, thank you for joining us. Britain is broken. Well, no, it's not, says Keir Starmer. Yet, yes, it is, says 2/3 of the British people.
Look, there are a huge number of problems which the government has got to deal with. And I think, Matt, I just listened to what you said. And part of me would actually at this point, if I buy your prescription, just want to give up. Because if that is the only way that you're going to look at Britain, then indeed it all seems pretty hopeless. But equally, I think if you could just take a step back, and you probably don't want to, so I'm not quite sure how much progress we'll make with this.
I'm all ears, Shaun. I'm listening.
Look, I think we've got to be realistic that the problems that Britain is in did not start in July of last year when Labour was elected. Those were problems which the government took on. And I think the management of expectation here is a critical part of the problem. And arguably, I think that there was a huge expectation, mainly which came out of the size of the majority which Keir Starmer enjoyed a year ago, which was that somehow there was some magic that could be done and that within a year, everything would be fine. Suddenly we'd see inflation, which had been nearly 10% at zero. Suddenly we would see unemployment disappear. We would see the boats just magically disappear out of the English Channel, that we'd have the NHS magically within a year all fine. Those things clearly have not happened. But was it ever realistic to think that within just 1 year they could do? I don't think it was. And I think, therefore, we do have a very real problem with the management of expectation. And I do think the government, in part, is responsible
managing
expectations.
I do hear you,
but it's not. Matt, it's not. Look, no, but don't hang on for one moment. You had quite a long lead into this to set the stall out, and I'm trying to have a go at now responding to the stall you set out.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask you about the specific choices. I completely agree with you, Sean.
It's only expectation.
Sean, I completely agree with you that the Conservative government left a disastrous legacy. I'm the last person in this country to defend the Tories, OK? I completely agree with you. But let me just ask you about the specific choices Labour have made since coming into office. It was Labour that increased taxes through the national insurance tax rise. It was Labour that invested more heavily in net zero, leaving us with the highest electricity prices in the Western world. It was Labour that decriminalised illegal migration, removed any deterrents, hence why the small boat numbers are going up. It was Labour that increased borrowing, that gave inflation-busting pay increases to public sector workers. So I understand your frustration with the Tories, and I share it. But let's not, let's just be realistic here. Labour have made a number of decisions, taken a number of decisions that have made this situation 10 times worse.
Look, if we take a couple of those examples, inflation being a very, very good one, we've got inflation now at 3.8%. That's clearly far too high. It's not significantly different from the EU zone, which is in around 2.7, 2.8%. It's not significantly different from the United States. Everybody's battling with inflation. Let's also get into the framework. When you mentioned, for example, net zero, there's a very big decision, and I think it informs a lot of what this government is trying to do. Whether it succeeds, we'll have to see, which is that it has to actually effectively put in place some 10-year plans. Those 10-year plans mean, for example, with energy, that we have decided that the right thing to do for the long term in Britain is to move to net zero. Now, the cost of doing that in the short term has undoubtedly contributed to energy inflation. But let's also remember that the fundamental spike that happened with the price of energy wasn't caused by a Labour government. It was caused by the consequence of the war that happened between Russia and Ukraine. And that is ongoing. Now,
electricity
again,
prices going up, taxes this autumn, almost certainly 100% going up, business rates going up. We've just had all of the major retailers in the UK come out over the last couple of days, and they've basically said, look, food prices are going to go up again about 6%. And they say specifically, because this Labour government has increased taxes through national insurance and increased business rates. So I'm a bit tired, and I think many people out there are a bit tired, of hearing about the Tory legacy, because we have all seen this government make a number of disastrous decisions, and the small boats are another example of that. It was Labour that decided to remove the deterrents, to decriminalise illegal migration, to remove age checks, to make it easier for people to come into this country, to approve the vast majority of asylum claims and then wonder why more people are coming into the country, because guess what, we're approving the vast majority of claims. I would just like to see this Labour government take some responsibility for some of the decisions it's taken, because Sean, I'll be honest with you, the next 3 months, I'm really worried about where this country's going with the economy. I think the cost of debt is going to spiral, and I suspect at some point, we've got Liam Halligan on the show later on, I suspect what he's going to be saying is it's only a matter of time until we get some kind of IMF intervention saying, you know what, the numbers don't make sense anymore in the UK. Nothing adds up anymore. Your debt is out of control. You don't have growth. GDP per capita is going backwards. You're not a productive economy, and your Labour government keeps raising taxes.
Well, again, if you put all those things together, you can produce the picture that you've done. And when you say, for example, you're tired of hearing it being blamed on the Tories, I'm really sorry if you're tired, but that is the truth. We inherited this economy. We inherited this debt. We inherited this lack of investment. When you say, for example, that the government just gave inflation-busting increases in the public sector, what did you actually want to happen, Matt? Did you actually want the NHS to be completely broken to the point whereby there would be no opportunity of a 10-year plan to fix it, because effectively you just tear it up and think it cannot be broken and it cannot be fixed? The government is trying to fix it. And I'm really sorry that, you don't want to talk about the Tories' inheritance. But the fact of the matter is, for 15 years, we lived with a Tory programme which failed to invest, failed to give the public sector workers the pay increases which allowed them to keep pace. Look, it's really difficult. There's no question about that. And I'm not remotely saying that this is about only expectation management. The problem we've got is that the problems of the world are so great. The problems which we've all had to face with energy prices in the UK are especially great, not least because the previous government for 15 years did nothing to invest in the energy structure of this country. As a consequence, we are entirely dependent.
We're going to continue debating these issues in a second with the panel, so I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your time, former Labour Cabinet Minister Sean Woodward. Now, I'm joined now by Acting Deputy Editor of The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw. Poppy, a lot of Labour people pointing fingers at the previous Conservative governments and saying, don't worry, Britain's broken because of these guys, nothing to do with us. It's quite clear to everybody out there, largely because they're reading the papers, they're watching the TV shows, are actually informed people, that actually Labour have taken a series of decisions here that have made this thing 10 times worse.
I think, again, I completely agree with you. I'm the last person in Britain to defend the Conservative record. It really is genuinely atrocious. And I think, your guest was correct in saying a lot of those long-standing issues were started and worsened under the Tories. But I think also, Matt, then you're completely correct in saying, what the Labour Party has done is they have inherited a terrible set of decisions, OK? And what have they done with them? They've either, as you said, made them worse. For example, with the tax on national insurance, that made a bad problem worse. They admit that we're running out of money to actually fill this fiscal black hole, but rather than cutting back on spending, which would upset some of their base, they've decided to go, no. So what they've done is they've continued the Tory record of government, where they don't take hard decisions, they throw money at the groups that they like, and they take money away from the groups that they don't like, and they refuse to actually make any decisions.
I mean, Kai Wilshaw, you are shaking your head, but look, Labour backed off from welfare reforms, backed off from fixing public sector, caved into all of the demands there, increased borrowing, then hit business on tax rises. So what we're looking at this autumn, I mean, as I said there to Sean Woodward, I'm genuinely concerned about what we're going to see in the next 2 months.
But had they not struck those deals, we'd be facing an autumn and winter of discontent and strikes. Yes, it's a horrible picture that the Labour Party and the Labour government face. But actually, I think the problem that they have is they're doing lots of the long-term work.
How can you say that when they didn't even reform the welfare state?
Well, they did. They paid it back. They made some concessions in the end, but it's still a vast improvement. It's still a vast improvement of where we were before. And yes, you're right that they're difficult choices. And you're right that the picture looks quite bleak, but I think what Sean said is completely right. When we paint this picture again and again and selectively choose statistics to fit our own narrative...
So you don't think Britain is broken?
I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So
I don't think Britain is beyond repair, no.
So can I just ask, just because I'm curious, what do you think have been the success stories of this Labour government?
They've been putting more money in public sector workers' pockets. That goes across the country, frankly. They're dealing with the migration backlog. They're dealing with the NHS backlog. These are things that come down slowly. They're not easy wins. We want a sugar rush high. It's not going to happen, but we'll see that in a few years.
Poppy Coburn.
I'm obviously on the right, so I'm going to just speak the words of a left-wing friend of mine who I was speaking to last night. We were sitting there in front of the television and we said, what do you think that the Labour government has achieved? Like, as a person from the left, as she sat there in silence for 30 seconds and she went, did they do something about free school meals? Oh, no, that was the Tories. She couldn't think of a single thing that she was actually impressed by. And I think, again, you can make the argument that they've thrown a bit of money at selective groups, but they haven't taken any tough decisions that you need to make. As you say, the country may not be beyond repair, but they're not doing anything to get us to that state.
Well, indeed, we're going to be looking at some of those long-term challenges in a little bit, including that bombshell Home Office data. But before we get to that, up next, Lucy Connolly, thank goodness, is finally free. And she has said today that she was Keir Starmer's political prisoner. and I happen to agree with her. But with criminal convictions for social media posts still in this country hitting a record high, the question I want to ask tonight is how many other Brits could face the same fate as Lucy Connolly? Because that free speech crisis has gone nowhere, and you are going nowhere, so I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I remember being introduced to Ken Bates.
Chelsea.
Used to own Chelsea, and just asked to sit down with him and then spend the next sort of 2 or 3 hours with him having lunch. And an ex of Donald Trump, Ivana Trump, his wife, and
Oh, you had dinner with her?
yeah, I remember having dinner actually with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Did you?
Yeah.
You said earlier you couldn't think
You
of
couldn't think of anyone else listing them.
I can't think of anyone. That literally just literally come into my head.
Hi, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Can we go back to that, please?
Catherine Zeta-Jones was. I used to live in a flat in Fulham, and I'm up at the top of the flat, and I was a sports reporter at the BBC, and I went round to Pizza Express, and I'm sitting eating, having my dough balls and everything else I was having, and reading the back pages of the papers in preparation for the work that I was doing the next day.
Yeah.
And I walked out of the cafe, and the beautiful, most stunning woman, Catherine Zeta-Jones, was walking by, and she said, "Oh, hello, Eamon." How? And then Welsh accent.
Really?
Hello, Eamon. How are you? And we were standing talking, and we were nattering away, and she said, "Anyway, why are we standing talking in the street? Have you eaten?"
And I went, said no.
I went, no, I didn't say no. I went, no. And I went inside, and I remember Pizza Express was empty. And the waiter saw me again, and I went and sat down with Catherine, and he said, "And you, sir, are you eating?" And I went, "Yes." He said, "What are you having?" I said, "Could I have the dough balls?" And I've never been able to eat dough balls again since.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. While she is finally home, Lucy Connolly has been reunited with her family after serving 10 months in prison for a tweet. And she has been speaking to Alison Pearson, the wonderful journalist at The Telegraph. Lucy's case has become a cause célèbre all over the world and has even caught the attention of the Trump administration. However, her case is far from unique. Figures show that prosecutions for social media posts that could stir up racial hatred have rocketed over the past decade, prompting calls for the law to be reviewed. Campaigners have claimed this is because the Public Order Act is being used too widely and being enforced too strictly. So should the law be tweaked to protect free speech and freedom of expression in this country? Well, to discuss this in a little bit more depth, I'm joined by my panel, acting deputy editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw, before we turn to those big Home Office stats on migration and, of course, Liam Halligan on the economy. Poppy, Lucy Connolly's out of prison. Everyone's, I think, a lot of people out there quietly celebrating, some people feeling as though she shouldn't have been in prison to begin with. But the free speech crisis that Lucy Connolly's become a symbol of hasn't disappeared.
No, exactly. I mean, the same laws that were used to imprison Lucy Connolly are still very much on the books. And I still think, it's not inconceivable that if we do see future sentences in this country, more people will be going to jail for putting things on Facebook or sending something out on X. And that's a major problem. Just last week, the US State Department released a report taking issue with the UK's human rights record because it's so concerned. I mean, this is our closest ally. They're so concerned about our record on freedom of speech. And they actually used the case of Lucy Connolly as an example of the government being heavy-handed on political protests. So, let's celebrate. It's a good thing that she's out of jail. She shouldn't have been there in the first place. But there's nothing to stop this from happening all over again.
Indeed, Kai. I mean, there's no doubt that Lucy Connolly will probably be in the White House in the not-too-distant future having a Diet Coke with President Trump. But one of the things that struck me, look at free speech in the UK, right? The expansion of non-crime hate incidents under Yvette Cooper, the use of these Orwellian powers to try and control the parameters of national debate, the Islamophobia definition that's come onto the agenda, clearly, I would argue, is going to be used to try and control what we can say about Islam and introduce blasphemy laws through the back door. The Online Safety Act, I could go on and on. It's very clear to people outside of the UK, like Poppy mentioned in the US and elsewhere, that we have a major free speech problem, even if Labour people deny it. So where do we go from here? Because Keir Starmer and the Labour Party cannot keep denying that we have a problem, because everybody out there can feel it. We all kind of have that moment before we send a tweet or a status update on Facebook, or at least I do. I think, well, I like to send some spicy stuff. Am I going to end up in prison for a year? But we do have a problem, don't we?
We do have a problem, and lots of these different issues that you outlined do add up to the greater picture. But let's be clear, Lucy Connolly's case is fairly unique. Only 44 or so, I think, last year, people were convicted under social media posts to incite racial hatred. Yes, but 759 people were convicted for public urination. There's lots of... there's 1.1 million convictions that happen in this country. Of course, there will be cases...
How many were given non-crime hate incidents?
But there are cases you can cherry-pick, and what's convenient, of course...
is 250,000 people since 2014 have got non-crime hate incidents.
But choosing to talk about Lucy Connolly rather than some of the other people who can completely, without shame, reposting screenshots of what they had said during the Southport riots, being found with weapons. That intent, that whipping up of racial hatred is a real problem, and we dismiss social media posts, but 70% of teenagers in the UK have seen violent imagery on social media, so let's not dismiss it as something quite light-hearted.
Poppy, what's the way forward to fixing this problem? Because my view has always been no Islamophobia definitions, no non-crime hate incidents, just abolish the lot. We have laws from the 1980s that have a specific remit around incitement for violence. So we don't need the sort of Blairite hate laws dumped on top. We just need to kind of clear the deck.
I'm now coming around to the opinion that we need some form of a First Amendment type encoded right to freedom of speech in the UK.
Like America.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who typically likes constitutionalism when it applies to Britain, but I no longer really trust the judiciary in this country to an extent that I think that they will uphold our common law rights now. I think we need to have it very clear in law with, again, that understanding of obviously incitement. You don't shout fire in a crowded theatre, but beyond that, you can say whatever you like, because I think this middle ground at the moment is being abused.
Here lies the rub, I think. You mentioned the judicial system, that you have no faith or trust in it. And this is where I really think we get into dangerous territory when we start painting a picture, a very dire picture, that can be reversed and telling people that they can't trust their institutions. And I think it leads us down a very dangerous path. If things get worse before they get better, as I hope, then you can the trust is being eroded in government by...
Hang on a second. Trust is being eroded because people are looking at these cases and they're saying, OK, so Lucy Connolly was given the best part of 3 years, at least with the sentence. Paedophiles were not being sent to prison. They were getting suspended sentences. We've got terror offenders, people that were actively downloading, terror manuals and preparing for acts. They were given suspended sentences, were not sent to prison. Members of the rape gangs got shorter sentences than Lucy Connolly. And you talk about the erosion of trust. What's eroding trust, I would argue, is the criminal and justice system, which is so blatantly two-tier in many respects, that people are saying, well, why would I uphold this system? Why would would I respect this system?
But pushing people towards vigilantism rather than trying to fix that broken system is not the solution.
I did provide a solution, which is a First Amendment. That's not vigilantism. That's going through Parliament, encoding a law to protect a right. It's not, again, that I don't trust these institutions for no good reason because I'm trying to whip up hatred. I don't trust them because they've proven themselves not worthy of my trust.
But you said the judiciary is what you don't trust, and it'll be the judiciary who's upholding the whatever First Amendment right that you seek to institute here in the UK, would it not?
It's a question of interpretation. The thing with the First Amendment right in the UK, because it's so clearly encoded, there's actually very little wiggle room for people to actually persecute you on freedom of speech. Whereas at the moment, too many laws that are coming through Parliament are vague enough that they are left to the interpretation of the judiciary, which is why we see these problems arising.
Can I just quickly ask before the end, we've seen a lot of people over the last few weeks say, well, about these protests that are kind of erupting over the weekend, peaceful protests, people saying we're not going to have we've had enough of illegal migration, we're going to be talking about it in the next section. But a lot of commentators out there saying, well, look, things are out of control, but I don't like the tone. I don't like the aggressiveness. I don't like people getting angry on social media. What do you make of that?
I mean, if you didn't want people to be angry, you should have dealt with the problem previously. I mean, in the case of the Bell Hotel in Epping, this is the perfect one. This was opened in May 2020. People had 5 years they were complaining about this hotel. They went to their MP, they signed petitions, they went to their local councillors, and they were ignored. This isn't an ideal situation. Of course it's not. But, what do you expect? You have to allow people to go through proper democratic measures and make sure their voices are heard.
And why is this that I see so many Labour politicians say, well, we get it, we get the anger, we get the concern, but don't be far right, don't say something that is provocative, don't say something that's divisive. What do they expect people to do?
Look, as much as I'm a left-winger, I hate the instinct to dismiss, and people shouldn't do that. And I think that's what we do see. It's an instinct from some people on the left. But I think it is right to try and urge caution, because we know from the marches for Palestine how association of a few bad apples can really taint the message of an entire protest.
Well, flying Palestine flags is absolutely fine. Flying Union Jack flags and St George's flags, well, the left are up in arms about that. Now, coming up after the break, a new record number of illegal migrants have crossed the Channel under a Labour government that promised to smash the gangs. With dozens of migrant hotel protests planned across the country for this weekend, peaceful protests, crucial that they remain peaceful. We're going to debate how to fix Britain's broken borders in just a minute.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's the continued threat of heavy showers over parts of Italy and the south of France for the next few days. Plenty of hot, sunny weather in Spain, and the same goes for much of Greece and Turkey as well. There are those heavy showers affecting southern Italy and further north and into the south of France. The chance of a heavy one in Nice. Small risk of a shower towards Barcelona, but most of Spain and Portugal dry and sunny, along with the Canaries. We'll hang on to the sunshine here, but a continued threat of showers in Barcelona and Nice into Monday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's not a bank holiday in Scotland, but elsewhere it is. 3 days of largely dry weather. Can't promise sunshine all weekend. There will be a mix of sun and clouds, but it should steadily start to warm up. High pressure is in control. Trapped under that area of high pressure, there has been quite a bit of cloud, and still through this evening and overnight, big lumps of cloud, providing a little bit of drizzle here and there, but most places won't see that and stay dry. Some decent clear spells across South Wales, southwest England, and some breaks in the cloud across northern Scotland, allowing temperatures well down into single figures here. Most towns and cities holding up about 11 to 13 degrees. Into the weekend, it is likely to start fairly drab for many, but I'm hopeful the cloud will tend to break up. We'll see some sunny spells. Like today, southwest England, South Wales should do okay for blue sky. The cloud thick enough maybe for a bit of drizzle over northern England, maybe the Midlands. And during the day, increasing threat of a few light showers just trickling towards Northern Ireland. Mostly a dry start across Scotland. So we'll have some clear skies in the northeast. It will allow for a chilly start here, but quite quickly, once the sun's up, those temperatures will start to tick up through the day. As we go through the day, not a great deal of change. I'm hopeful the cloud will break up a little bit more and we'll see some sunny spells. So dry and bright basically sums it up, but there will be a few showers coming into Northern Ireland during the afternoon. Later they could drift into western Scotland. Temperature-wise, well, about average for the time of year for most, but still feeling quite cool, especially if it stays cloudy in northeast England, only 16 or 17 here. Bit of sunshine, we could see temperatures into the low 20s elsewhere. Sunday sees the threat of a few showers into western Scotland, but again, pretty well scattered. Most places will stay dry, and many places will see a bit more in the way of sunshine coming through. And as a result, temperatures just lifting by a little bit. And into Monday, even more optimistic for sunny skies for many and slightly warmer.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with Matt Goodwin, and as we have been here, a story has been breaking in British politics. It's going to be a big one. Nigel Farage in the Times tonight has been outlining what will be Reform's strategy for migration and deportations. I'm going to read you a key passage from that story that has just been released. Nigel Farage, I quote directly, "The aim of this legislation that Reform propose to introduce is mass deportations. We have a massive crisis in Britain. It is not only posing a national security threat, but it is leading to public anger that, frankly, is not very far away from disorder. There is only one way," he says, "to stop people coming into Britain, and that is to detain them and deport them." Well, that is pretty clear, pretty unequivocal stuff. Let's turn to some of the figures which demonstrate the scale of this problem, which tonight Reform are speaking about, which is the total lack of border control in this country. A shocking 111,000 people claimed asylum in the UK last year. That is a staggering 14% increase on the previous year. 15,000 people, as I highlighted on social media this week, came to the UK last year to study and then applied for asylum, coming in on the student visa programme, an absolutely damning indictment of our higher education sector. And the cherry on top, out of all the long-term visas that were given out by the UK last year, guess what? 14% were long-term work visas, just 14%. The others were for students, refugees and relatives. Unbelievable. Well, to discuss this crisis, the scale of this crisis, I am joined live in the studio tonight by one man who knows a lot more about this crisis than anybody else, Chairman of Migration Watch, Alp Mehmet. Alp, firstly, your reaction to Nigel Farage's statement there. You will not have had time to read the Times story in detail, but he is talking about leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. He is talking about reforming the Human Rights Act. He is talking about revisiting the post-Second World War legislation and conventions on refugees. And he is talking about detaining, deporting and processing offshore.
Great. Dare I say that we've been calling for that for some time, years if not longer. Look, my notes are here. I've pretty much got written down here, exactly what you say Nigel is saying. And the reason is that we've now got to get serious about stopping the boats. What this government has done so far, has, rather than dissuade people, deter people, has encouraged people. What I would do if I were Keir Starmer is call an emergency cabinet meeting tomorrow and say, we are going to leave the ECHR. Send the letter in. In 6 months, we will be out. During that time, we should do things, tweak legislation here and there. We should actually abandon, do away with the absurd immigration appeals courts and judges. That was never intended to be what it has become. Now, all you have to do is say, asylum, and that's it.
Well, as
You're
we
in.
saw this week with the Home Office data, more than 2/3 of all asylum claims are being approved. We saw only 4% of small boat migrants who have arrived since 2018, only 4% have been returned. And one of the other shocking figures for me, the use of hotels up 8%. Labour is not smashing the gangs, it's not reducing the number of hotels, it's not controlling the borders. And I would suggest to you, Alp, and again, you have been ahead of the curve on this, that actually we are approaching a really important watershed moment in this debate, because for the first time, Farage is putting out there in the political debate, you know, a complete departure from the consensus in Westminster. Get out of the ECHR, reform the Blairite Human Rights Act, you know, start talking about mass deportations of people who have broken our laws and come into the country. He is pulling the Overton window, isn't he? He is shifting the Overton window, what is considered to be acceptable in SW1, much like he did on Brexit, much like he did, I think, on immigration in an earlier period, immigration from within the EU. I mean, he's changing the parameters of our debate.
Yeah, sure. As he did with the EU debate, great. However, we've actually got to be a little bit circumspect and careful about what it is what we're saying we're going to do. Of course, we should remove anyone who's no right to be here. We must do that. But you've got to prepare the ground before that happens. And bear in mind...
One interesting thing, if I can just briefly interrupt you, one of the interesting things I did notice in that Times piece tonight is it suggested draft legislation has been drawn up already.
Well, great. And I look forward to seeing that legislation. But one thing I was going to point to, the 111,000, let's bear in mind, as I think you've pointed out, that only 40% or thereabouts actually crossed in boats. Yeah. The others came in legally or indeed in the backs of lorries and across within the common travel area from Ireland. It's absurd at the moment that people can come in any way, and the moment they are being told to leave, they claim asylum and they get to stay.
Well, let's just bring in the panel now. Acting Deputy Comment Editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw. Poppy, what's your initial reaction to this intervention by Nigel Farage this evening?
Well, it's incredibly refreshing, because for once somebody actually has an answer to the constant false statement that's made, which is, well, we can't do anything about asylum. It's just as natural as the wind blowing or the sea coming in. It's completely out of our hands, and so stop being so nasty by talking about it. Actually, there is a very clear set of policies that I think, Alp, you've just set out very clearly, that you can follow if you want to completely overhaul the system to work for the British people. And so I just think it's absolutely brilliant to see a major leading political figure who may very well become our next Prime Minister, instead of equivocating, instead of saying it's an issue of comms, going, no, don't worry, we've got a plan. We're going to follow it and we're going to fix it.
But some of that plan is working, is it not? Because what was really worrying, I think, about this week... but the discussion we've had this week has been about that headline figure. There are some positive figures underneath that, cutting the returns of asylum seekers by 30%, the costs by 11%. You know, so I'm not saying there's not an issue, but there are positive measures that are being taken that are starting to reduce the backbone.
I'm sorry, Clive, it's not working at all, and all the evidence evidence points to the fact that it's not working. I can go into detail if you like, but I won't now.
Well, don't do it right now, because we are going to continue the debate about Broken Britain in just a minute. Just want to thank my panel for now, because after the break, it's Matt in Conversation, and I'm going to be joined by esteemed journalist and economist Liam Halligan to discuss why he thinks the UK economy is hanging by a thread and why he thinks there may be more chaos just around the corner. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you in a minute.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News. Now it's time for Matt in Conversation, where each week I sit down for a frank, no-nonsense discussion with a top expert. And tonight I'm going to be joined by economist and journalist Liam Halligan, because inflation has just hit 3.8%. That's nearly double the Bank of England's target. Our national debt now stands at nearly 100% of GDP, while borrowing costs continue to spiral completely out of control. We have just had a month recently where we paid £16 billion just servicing the amount of debt that we have in this country. How worried should we be, excuse me, about the stability of the UK economy? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by my panel. Just before we move to discuss this with Liam Halligan, Poppy Coburn and Kai Wilshaw. Poppy, the state of the economy briefly before we turn to Liam, in your mind, what's your assessment?
I mean, I think we discussed earlier in the show, there's so many different moving parts that kind of give the impression that the UK is just at a really, really, really horrible state. I mean, that inflation figure you just mentioned...
3.8%.
Inflation is never good. Inflation arguably wiped out all of the incumbents in the aftermath of COVID, right, because it shot up, because everybody locked down their economies. The reason it's so damaging, especially for the UK, is because we have so much public debt, and that is linked to inflation. So that's the problem. So when inflation goes up, the government has to spend even more money. And I think they're spending, am I right in saying, over £10 billion pounds every month just servicing public debt? That's money that should be spent on schools, that's money that should be spent on hospitals, that's money that should be spent arguably do something about the border, and yet it's not.
Kai Wilshaw, I mean, it doesn't look good. Food prices are going to go up another 6%, according to the retailers this week. We've got, you know, really big structural problems with the economy. We're just about to turn to Liam Halligan in a second. I mean, what's your assessment of this difficult winter ahead? Because it is not outside the realm of possibility that we have some kind of IMF-style intervention.
Exactly, and you compare what would be needed now compared to the 1970s, and the scale is so much higher.
Well, let's just hear from Liam Halligan, because he's going to join us right now. Liam, we're just talking about the dire state of the UK economy, difficult winter coming up. We've just seen the retailers coming out saying, look, inflation is sky high, you're going to raise business rates, you're putting up taxes through national insurance, food prices are going to go up this winter. I mean, what's your assessment of what's coming around the corner here?
Well, economists, Matt, are known as dismal scientists, and I think we're sort of coming into our element, as it were. I don't wish to stand here or sit here even on GB News, you know, back at my old school, if you like, and be sort of sandwich board man and say things that are negative just for the sake of it. I'm generally an optimistic person. I generally believe, Matt, as I know that you do, in the entrepreneurial vim and vigour of the British people, in our manufacturing ingenuity, in our technological prowess. But the economy really is in a bad way. Increasingly, the UK is an inflation outlier around the world. We just saw the average inflation across the Eurozone, average inflation across the rest of the G7 advanced economies going down. We've seen that over recent months. And meanwhile, UK inflation's gone up. Inflation now is heading for 4% a year. That's double its target. And everyone can feel that when they go to the supermarket. Food price inflation, they say it's 4.9%. Not on my Nelly is food only 4.9% more expensive now than it was a year ago. It's a lot more expensive. At the same time, strap yourself in, because we need to talk about something a little bit technical. And your other two panellists have been broaching this subject too. The cost of borrowing for the British government, even though the Bank of England has been lowering its policy rates, you know, the base rate, as we call it, so much attention given to where the Bank of England sets the rate at which it lends to other banks, that's the base rate. The actual rate in the marketplace, as driven by investors, you know, people, institutions, pension funds, insurance companies with money that lend money to governments and to companies that then lend it on, the cost that they've been charging to lend in the UK has been going up very strongly, even though Bank of England rates have been going down. And that's why it is by no means an exaggeration. I wouldn't even say it's irresponsible. I actually think we now need to take it upon ourselves to talk about the genuine fiscal dangers the UK faces.
Just on that point about fiscal dangers, let's just quickly fast forward to these likely tax rises we've got coming around the corner, because you've got a fiscal black hole here of, some people say, up to 50 billion. So Rachel Reeves is almost certainly going to have to raise taxes. I mean, how does that go down in the markets? I mean, what do you see coming up as we, you know, everyone comes back from holiday and Westminster kicks off again, and the first thing Labour's got to do is jack up taxes?
Well, even though, you know, the government is spending a lot more than it's raising in taxes each month, we've seen massive borrowing totals in April, May and June. July was a little bit different for technical reasons, but we've seen the government borrowing like 15 to 20 billion pounds a month. Absolutely crazy. But what worries financial markets, why they worry about literally the creditworthiness of the UK, is that if you try and meet a hole in the budget by just raising tax rates, as Labour likes to do ideologically, oh, there's a problem, let's spend more government money, let's tax the rich more. But when you start raising tax rates beyond the rate at which they already are, at 70-year high, you pull the tax lever and you get no more tax revenue because you just kill enterprise. You know, people move abroad. People don't, you know, they don't only not take on more employees, they take on less employees because...
Which is exactly what the large retailers, I guess, have been saying this week.
We're seeing, and this is why it's not irresponsible for you and I to talk about 1976. What happened in 1976?
Well, that indeed is the big, that's the big risk facing us all, that we've got a 1970s style IMF
the UK
intervention.
Had to be bailed out.
Liam, we're frustratingly out of time. We've got to turn to Patrick Christys because he's coming up to look at some of these issues as well. But Liam, thank you for your time. Patrick, what have you got coming up on your show tonight? I'm sure you're going to be looking at some of these issues around Broken Britain.
Yes, hello to my wonderful studio audience. Fantastic. This is the only way to kickstart your Friday night. Well, there's lots on. Lucy Connolly has come out of prison and she's come out swinging. She says that she was Sir Keir Starmer's political prisoner. Do we agree with that? Do we not agree with that? What do you think? Well, it'll be interesting to get that take. And in the last few moments, Nigel Farage has just unveiled Reform's illegal migration plan. About 5 deportation flights a week, even using things like the Ascension Islands to house people. Does, at face value, does this sound like something you might agree with or not? No, well, we can talk about all of that. And the government has decided to essentially go to war with the British public over that asylum seeker hotel verdict. So all that and much more, I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's not a bank holiday in Scotland, but elsewhere it is. 3 days of largely dry weather. Can't promise sunshine all weekend. There will be a mix of sun and clouds, but it should steadily start to warm up. High pressure is in control. Trapped under that area of high pressure, there has been quite a bit of cloud, and still through this evening and overnight, big lumps of cloud.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.